Hey guys, it's Mel. Welcome to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to do a wrap up for the Because We Can Readathon. But before I get into that wrap up, I really would just like to touch on, once again, the situation in the United States surrounding the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. I am currently doing the Blackout Buddy Read that is being hosted by Shay over at Books with Shay. I recommend that you go and watch her video where she talks about that. I will link that in the description below and in the eye just up here. I think that Shay has done all of us white booktubers and white readers a great service by creating a buddy read whereby we can read books that will get us thinking about and engaging around the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States. As an Australian, I would also like to add that if you are Australian, I urge you to consider the situation in our own country. Racism is definitely a part of Australia's history and Australia's current society and political landscape, and I really think that we need to be aware of that and to consider that. To that end, I will be linking a variety of different ways that you can get involved, as well as donating, as well as linking a variety of different booktubers that you could go and watch their stories in regards to how they have lived their lives, but also their own experiences on booktube, which is quite eye-opening as well. This little clip is something that I'm going to insert in front of my Because We Can Readathon Wrap Up, as well as my Mentalhealthathon Wrap Up. So to continue with the main topic of this video, let's talk about the readathon. I decided in April that instead of doing a wrap up for May and April, I would do a wrap up for the books I read in April, and then I would do a Eurovision wrap up, which you would have seen already, and then I would do a Because We Can Readathon wrap up, and then I will also do a Mentalhealthathon reading wrap up, because I participated in those 3 readathons throughout the months of April and May. So for those people that participated in Because We Can Readathon or were watching all of my videos for that readathon, you would know that this particular readathon not only had reading challenges, but it also had daily video challenges. I did do 6? Yes, I did 6 out of the 7 video challenges, so I will link the playlist for all of those challenges in the description below and also in the eye up above. I will also link the Because We Can Readathon YouTube channel in the eye and in the description, the hosts' channels for that readathon as well. They are all very cool booktubers and you should definitely go and check them out. Anyway, so the video challenges were to tell the story of the first time you did something bookish. So I told the story of a photo of me and my dad. The second challenge was do a bookish DIY that you've never done before. So I made a little bookmark. Day number 3 was to show us 2 characters going on a first date. I actually kind of went for the easy route for this one, and I just showed 2 characters that actually go on a particular date in a book. So I kind of just basically read out the the book date, but I did act it out with 2 little figurines, one of which you can just see up there, Steve from Minecraft, and the other one you can't see but is also on my mantelpiece, and that is just my little artist mannequin. Then the next one was to recreate the cover of a first book in a series. So I chose to do The Bronze Horseman by Paulina Simmons, mostly because it was relatively straightforward. It's just a young girl, basically, just her head, so I did that. The next one was to create a poem using the first word of book titles, so I did that one as well, and Rowan did that as well. So both our poems are, again, as I said, in the playlist in the description below. Day 6 was to recreate how you imagined a character when they were first introduced. I actually didn't do that one. And then day 7 was to give us your first impressions of a book based on its cover. So I went through and found a few different book covers online that I hadn't seen before and just said what I thought they would be about, which was pretty cool. So I've never done a readathon that incorporated video challenges before, and I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was really interesting and a really nice different way of doing things. It did add a little bit more pressure for the week because I had to be filming as well as reading, but it was still really fun and enjoyable, and I didn't find any of the videos a huge amount of effort to go through, but maybe that may have just been because I didn't put a huge amount of effort into them. But anyway, yeah, so if you want to check those out, then obviously please do. Like I said, the playlist is in the eye and in the description. I'm just going to say from here on out, anything that I talk about, whether it be my own videos or whether it be other people's videos or channels, I will obviously link in the description, and I'll try and get the little eye happening so I can stop repeating that. So the reading challenges I also really liked as well. I thought that they were really fun and really interesting and a bit different. I didn't say before, but the theme of this readathon was first, because it's the first time that the Because We Can Readathon happened. So as you saw in the videos, there were first words in book titles, your first impressions, first date, and so on. That theme continued, as you'd imagine, into the reading challenges as well. So what I'm going to do is tell you what those challenges were, and then I will show you the books that I read and how they met the challenges, and then I'll tell you about the books and what I thought of them. So, first one was spin around and pick the first book you touch. So I did do that. I'll show you the little clip of me doing that just here, if I can figure it out. Then read the first book in a series. Read a book beginning with A, read an author's first book, read a book by a new to you author, read a book with the number 1 or the word first in the title, and read a book that has its birthday in 2020, which means it was released in 2019. So I did complete all 7 challenges, although I did a fair bit of doubling up, so I only read 4 books, but I did do the 7 challenges. I think 4 books in 1 week is actually pretty great. I don't tend to read 4 books in 1 week usually, so I was pretty impressed with myself for that one. Let's go through and look at the books. So the first one that I want to show you is Archer's Goon by Diana Wynne Jones. This was the one that I chose when I spun around and picked a book, and then that worked out really well because it's also a book with the letter A at the beginning of the title. So that worked for those 2 challenges. It's also a book by a new to me author, so I have not actually read any Diana Wynne Jones before, so that works for that challenge also. And the next book that I want to talk to you about is the number 1 Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. So this worked on a number of levels as well. This one is a new to me author also. It has the number 1 in the title, so it works for that challenge. It is the first book in a series, so again, it works for that challenge. Yeah, so that was quite a few challenges with that one. And then on my e-reader, I read 2 books. I read This Is How You Lose the Time War and Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine works as a author's first book. It was a reread for me, and I knew that I really liked it, so that kind of made it a little bit easier for me to read. And as you probably know, it also was my crossover book for all 3 of those readathons. So for the Eurovisionathon, it was a book that takes place in Britain, and for the Mentalhealthathon, it is one of the host picks. I'm pretty sure it was Simone's pick, and for Because We Can Readathon, it is an author's first book. And then This Is How You Lose the Time War by, I just have to figure out who wrote it, Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone. Anyway, so this book was published in 2019, so that works for the last challenge, which is to read a book that has its first birthday in 2020. It's also a book written by 2 authors that are new to me, so it works on that level as well. So those are all the challenges that I completed, and I think I did pretty well. Like I said, I read 4 books in 1 week, which is actually pretty unusual for me, and I also completed 6 out of 7 video challenges, which, especially considering that I was doing work and also was reading, I think works pretty well. So there we go. Let's talk about the books and what I thought of them and what they were about. So first up, Archer's Goon by Diana Wynne Jones. This book is a middle grade domestic fantasy, I think is what you would call it. So it takes place in our world, and it is, so it's sort of an urban fantasy in that respect. So sort of the first thing that happens in this story is the catalyst that brings the story about, if that makes sense. So the first thing that happens is that one of the children in the family come home and they find a huge giant of a man sitting in their kitchen, refusing to move and saying that he is there to speak to their father. So basically, to begin with, you think that their father has done something illegal and that he's gotten himself involved with some kind of gang, and that this person is a gang enforcer who's there to get something off his dad or whatever it might be. That is the first thing you think is going on, but as you read the book, you discover that that's not entirely the case, and that his father is involved in something that's a little bit dodgy, but it's nothing that you would expect. So it's not anything sort of mundane, as it were. It is to do with these magical people who are in control of the town and who are trying to take over the world. And they have all sorts of magical powers, and that the father, who is an author, has been writing about 2,000 words every month or so and giving them to this person in the council, and unbeknownst to him, that those words were being used to sort of make all of the siblings, who are these magical people who are out to control the world, captured into this one town to stop them from taking over the world. And so it's about them trying to beat each other, and this family get involved in this situation because of the words that the father was writing, and they're trying to figure out how to help save the world. I'm trying not to give too much away because I don't want to give any spoilers, but it's a bit hard not to, because a lot of the plot is revealed as you go, so it's kind of hard to, and each plot twist is a extra part of the mystery of what's going on, so it's kind of hard to describe without ruining anything. But anyway, that was that one. As you probably know by now, I don't give out stars. I find that it's a little bit misleading, so yeah, I'm not giving out stars at the moment, but I will say that I really enjoyed this book. I thought that it was really well written. I thought the pacing was really great. I thought that it was really fun and interesting. I thought that it was quite different from anything I'd read before. It reminded me quite a lot of Garth Nix's middle grade books, which are called the Keys to the Kingdom series, if anyone has read those books. Given that this one was published first, it's very likely that Garth Nix was influenced by Diana Wynne Jones rather than the other way around. But yeah, it was fun, interesting and unique. I definitely recommend it, particularly if you like middle grade and you like kind of urban domestic fantasy, something that I thought was really great and really interesting and worth a read. Next up was the #1 Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. I thought this was a really fun book. It wasn't my favourite book that I've read this year. It wasn't my least favourite book that I read this year. It's a pretty middle of the road good book. It's quite well written. It's a style that I don't necessarily read very often. The main character, Ma Ramasto, is referred to throughout the entire book as Ma Ramasto, which I just find is a very formal style of writing. There's nothing wrong with that, it's just not a style that I necessarily connect with as well. But having said that, it was still really interesting. There were lots of little bits of the story that were really fun. It was kind of more of a collection of little anecdotes about the main character, Ma Ramasto's detective agency and the various different things that she gets up to as a detective. So there wasn't necessarily one overarching plot point or storyline in the book, so if you are a very plot-driven person, you might not find that particularly good. Not to say that there wasn't a storyline, because each little anecdote had a storyline, but there wasn't one kind of overarching, this is the beginning and there's a plot point that happens here that leads to this, to leads to that, and so on. So it was more a collection of stories about the detective agency and what cases they get given and what they therefore get up to as an agency, which is actually only one person really. So, but yeah, if you are a person who likes reading that sort of mystery, sort of akin to something Agatha Christie may have written, although I don't personally think as good as an Agatha Christie, but along that same kind of vein, then I think that you would enjoy this book. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the book. I'm not 100% sure whether I will go and search out any more of the series. I'm not against that. If they came across my path, I would probably read them, but it's not something I necessarily feel the need to track down, but it's definitely something that I am glad that I read and that I enjoyed reading. Next up is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. So I feel like that has been spoken about quite a bit in the past, both on my channel but in booktube universe in general. It's a pretty popular book for the last couple of years, so I reckon that most people probably know what it's about. But basically, Eleanor is a young woman living in London. It's contemporary, and it's about, we start out finding out about Eleanor having discovered a man that she thinks she's fallen in love with, who is going to be her soulmate, and then we learn, as the book goes on, we learn more about Eleanor and her past, and she befriends a man, and then because of her friendship with this man and various circumstances that she finds herself in the first little bit of the story, we start to see a lot of stuff to do with her past and what's happened to her unravel, and we start to get to the bottom of what's really going on for Eleanor. So it worked really well for this readathon because it's Gail Honeyman's first book. But the main reason why I read this book is because it was for Mentalhealthathon. I personally think this is a fantastic book for mental health rep. It talks about trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder in a really, really lovely way. It's just really well written. It's just really nicely written, and it's just really respectful. I highly recommend it to anyone really, with the fact that there are trigger warnings. So there are trigger warnings for post-traumatic stress disorder, there are trigger warnings for trauma, for child abuse, for child death, and for memory loss. So if any of those things are triggers for you, then definitely wouldn't recommend picking them up, but otherwise definitely read that book. It's amazing. So that now leads me to my last book, which was This Is How You Lose the Time War by Max Gladstone and Amal El-Mutar. I apologise. I'm not really sure how to express how I feel about this book. If I was giving this book a star rating based solely on the writing style and based solely on the writing techniques used, then it would get 5 out of 5 stars. It is very well written. It is technically brilliant. I haven't come across any books that are quite like it, and I haven't come across many books that have a similar tone to them or writing style. So in that regard, it is fantastic. Definitely, if you are a person that appreciates really technically well written stories, definitely recommend it. If I was giving it a star rating based solely on enjoyment, I would probably I'd probably give it about a 3. It's not that I didn't appreciate it. Obviously, I thought that it was technically brilliant and beautiful, but it was also incredibly confusing, and it took me quite a while to get into it and to feel like I understood what was happening. I listened to this on audiobook, which I highly recommend that you do. If you've been around for a while, you would probably know that that's not a recommendation that I give out very often. I am not a huge audiobook person. I much prefer physical books. I'm getting used to audiobooks. I'm starting to enjoy them a lot more, but it's not my preference for reading. However, started reading this book on my e-reader, and I really struggled to get into it and to understand what was happening. But then I switched to audio, and definitely it helped me to understand. I think because it's a very different style from what I'm used to, I had to do a lot of work to actually read and understand the words, and so I therefore wasn't putting as much effort into really understanding what was actually going on. So yeah, it was something that I struggled with, even though I enjoyed it. Like I said, I definitely appreciated it for its work and for its techniques, and I thought that it was beautifully written. I just found it very strange. I didn't feel like I understood what was happening a lot of the time, and like I said, it took me quite a while to start to understand what I was hearing. Again, partly that's because of the style. It is told in first person present tense, which is not a tense that I really have come across very often, and just the way that the authors chose to express some of the concepts, like the time travel, was so different from anything I'd come across that it just really took a lot of effort to remember what it was that they were referring to. So they refer to the way that the robots, which they basically are, the way that they time travel in the story is that time is a braid, like almost like hair, and they move up and down the braids to get to different time points. But then within the times, they can manipulate the fabric of the world, so they can manipulate the genetic and molecular makeup of the universe, so they can write letters in plants, for example. And just those concepts were nothing I'd come across before, and so because of that, it kept taking me a long time to really read it. But I really appreciated that, partly because it was so new, but partly it worked really well within the story, even though, like I said, I struggled to comprehend the story. So I'm not really sure what that means from the point of view of my enjoyment of the story. Like I said, if I just was grading it on a technical level, 5 out of 5 stars. If I was just grading it on an enjoyment level, 2, maybe 3 stars. But yeah, if you like science fiction, if you like strange books, if you like complicated but beautifully written books, definitely would recommend. The audiobook's only 4 hours long, so it's not a huge amount of time and effort in that regard, so it's definitely something worth checking out. But I might have to reread it and just sort of see whether I can understand anything a second time around. Anyway guys, that was my Because We Can Readathon wrap up. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have anything that you'd like to comment on, whether it be my video choices, whether it be my books and my opinions of the books, or questions or anything at all, please do comment below and let me know. And yeah, like I said, I really hope you enjoy this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time.